Alright, so I just got back from seeing Thor 4, and instead of spending some time taking down notes, I'm just going to go ahead and give you guys my initial review just off the top of my head. So while my memory's still fresh and there's still popcorn in my teeth, I say let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and discuss some of the things that I really enjoyed about this movie, and then that's going to lead me right into the things that kind of took away from my enjoyment of this movie. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So thinking about this movie in its entirety, I would say that this movie's greatest asset would also be its greatest weakness. You know what you're getting when you're dealing with a Taika Waititi film. He is a comedic director by nature, and he really puts a lot of effort into making sure that he has as many jokes as possible. Some are well written, but then a lot of them are very much reliant on the actor's ability to improvise. And we saw a lot of this in Ragnarok, where they kind of took Thor out of what we knew him to be, which is more of a stoic warrior, and turned him into a little more of a goofball, really let Chris Hemsworth show off his comedic talent and his improvisation skills.
I choose to run toward my problems and not away from them.
That's what...
Because that's what heroes do.
Overall, I didn't enjoy Ragnarok a lot when I first watched it, but I've come to appreciate it a little bit more. I've been able to kick back a little bit, have more fun, and treat it like a spin-off in a way. See, in Love and Thunder, Thor in a way turns into more of a joke. He is basically played for laughs for pretty much the entire movie. He doesn't really have a lot of great moments because he's mostly picking up after his own screw-ups. In little scenes like him trying to give speeches to people throughout the movie, the director's choice to turn him into this lumbering, clunky piece of meat is something that didn't really sit well with me. Granted, there was times where it was genuinely funny and it got a chuckle out of me. But I think when I look at Thor as a character, I think we may be starting to get too far into the Thor as a joke category. If you were to ask me what a perfect portrayal of Thor looks like, I would point you to Infinity War. Because there are several moments in that movie where you look at all the things that Thor has lost. You get a moment with peace and quiet where you can sit with Thor and see as he's processing all of his grief and all of his emotions. You realize that he sometimes creates funny scenarios or makes jokes to cope with the fact that he is starting to realize he's alone. A lot of the people that have been close to him, his family and his friends, have died either something he was indirectly responsible for or something he could have prevented. And that's a lot of weight for him to deal with, and so he turns to comedy to process it. I thought that's awesome.
You know, I'm 1,500 years old. I've killed twice as many enemies as that, and every one of them would have rather killed me, but none succeeded. I'm only alive because fate wants me alive. Thanos is just the latest in a long line of bastards, and he'll be the latest to feel my vengeance. Fate wills it so.
Mm-hmm. And what if you're wrong?
Well, if I'm wrong, then what more could I lose?
But starting with Ragnarok and leading into Love and Thunder, you start to lose the essence of what makes Thor special, and now he's basically a walking punchline. As for the villain, I thought Christian Bale played a phenomenal Gore the God Butcher. I know they couldn't take a lot of stuff out of the comics and use this in this movie, but I feel like for what he had to work with, Christian Bale delivered. I mean, he's going to deliver every single time. I'm so grateful that they were able to get him for this role, because he gave it 100% and I bought every single second that he was on screen. Honestly, I wish we had some more time with him, but unfortunately we got to put him in what I call the Killmonger list of the villains that were really, really cool, but we only got to see them for like one movie because they killed them off. I thought they did a great job of making Gore relatable. I liked the scene at the beginning with him and his daughter to really get us to understand where he's coming from. Yeah, I really don't have too many issues with the villain on this one. I really think that was a strong point of this film. Natalie Portman did great as always as Jane Foster and Mighty Thor. I was definitely curious how they were going to explain how she got the powers of Thor, but I think they did a good job. To be honest, I think that could be said with pretty much everybody in this movie. They all did very well with what they had. Instead of focusing on the actors and their portrayal of these characters, I do believe there's something that needs to be said about the behind the scenes stuff. Call me crazy, but the more that time passes from phases 1 and 2, I start to really appreciate those films more and more, because I feel like we're lacking nowadays the time and effort put into those older movies. The sets back then felt genuine. I mean, shoot, if you go back to Thor 1, when they had to recreate Asgard with a combination of CGI and practical effects, I personally think that looks a lot better than most of the stuff in this movie. My wife and I were talking about on the way home where there's 5 or 6 times where you can clearly see they're standing in front of a green screen. And some of the awkward pauses that we saw a lot of in Ragnarok, where the actors kind of got to improv and bounce off each other with their comedy, we see more of that here, but this one felt a lot more flat, because it seems like they were just told to just stand there and try to say something funny. And so they start rattling off a bunch of stuff to bounce things off each other, but this time it didn't land. And it just led to a lot of awkward moments that were trying to get giggles out of the crowd, and it just seemed a little forced.
Well then, if it's color we need, let's bring the rainbow.
Bring the rainbow, is that a catchphrase or something?
She's only been a Thor for a minute. I mean, saving lives she's quite good at, but the rest of it, she needs work.
How many catchphrases have there been?
A lot.
Yep, jump the gun.
Hang on, he moves through shadows and he's going to the shadow realm. It seems like that's where he's going to be the most powerful.
You're right, we can't just go marching in there. It could be a trap.
Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?
I'm thinking it.
What are we thinking?
Thinking
I'm
what?
thinking it too.
Omnipotency.
But back to my previous point, technology has progressed so far nowadays that I start to wonder if maybe we're losing what made these movies so special. You can call me a hater if you'd like, but I personally think that once we started to pull away from practical effects, it's really started to become glaringly obvious when the filmmakers are just slapping CGI on things and just calling it good. There are several points where Jane's Thor helmet would just flip on and off, and it just looks so fake. In a way, it kind of reminded me of the technology with the Iron Man suit in Infinity War and Endgame. Granted, I love nanotechnology. I'm not bashing the Stark tech suit, but I'm just saying that once you start to fully CGI people's costumes, it looks incredibly obvious. As for the story, I definitely believe it was a very simple story that they told, although I feel like they could have done a lot more and been a lot more creative with the script. I'm okay with the simplistic premise of stop the bad guy, turn off the device that's opening up a portal. I mean, how many times have we seen the hero try to stop the villain from opening up a portal to something? The script in its entirety, I feel like needed a lot more work. I feel like it may have been unfinished. Like I mentioned before, with all of the moments for comedy, they really didn't give the movie a chance to breathe, which led to a lot of serious moments that were undercut by a joke or someone trying to say something funny. And I think that really detracts from these emotional hits that the audience needs to take in order to feel and sympathize with these characters. And that's just the direction that Taika chose to steer this Thor character into. If anything, it's get to the punchline at all costs, and whatever it takes to get to that joke, to land that joke in the way you want to tell it, everything else basically becomes a side note. And here's why I'm split on this movie in general, is because I feel like there's parts of it that are really good, but I also think that there was a lot of this movie that just didn't need to be there. The screaming goats were a very vocal example of things that overstayed their welcome. I mean, it was probably maybe a little funny the first time we saw them, but they're literally in pretty much every other scene, and it really starts to wear on you. Those goats screaming really started to irritate me by the end of the movie.
Oh, look at those! They are wonderful!
Yes, they are. They also scream quite a lot.
Just makes me a little concerned, because Phase 4 of the MCU has been so up and down when it comes to the quality, and I know that Kevin Feige has a plan for where he wants things to go, but this phase specifically has felt so disjointed and so much less purposefully driven than any of the other phases, and I worry that maybe movies like this are starting to become the norm, where sometimes scenes look like they're ripped straight out of a Saturday Night Live skit, or the CGI looks like someone did it on Adobe Photoshop in their mom's basement, or the scriptwriters and the directors were basically like, hey, what if a bunch of 10-year-olds wanted to write a Marvel movie? What's the kind of stuff they would want to see in it? And then they put literally every single thing that a 10-year-old would want to see into this movie. Oh wait, they did. So all in all, while I thought that there was some cool moments in this movie, I walked out of this movie feeling like it was an empty calorie movie. Sean Chandler on his movie review channel mentions this a lot. He calls it a Taco Bell movie, and I couldn't agree more. So basically with a Taco Bell movie, you're basically consuming empty calories. You go into the movie, you enjoy yourself, you get home, you spend some time thinking about it and processing, and then all of a sudden you start to realize that it really wasn't as great as you thought it was going to be. And then sometimes you find yourself in a worse off place than you were when you first consumed. I'm not saying that Thor 4 is a bad movie, in my opinion. I just believe it's something that I watched, I enjoyed it for what it was temporarily, but then this is something I'm probably going to forget about in a couple of weeks. That's not a bad thing. It's okay to have movies that you can just turn your brain off and enjoy for what it is. But I think it's the fact that we have seen what the MCU is capable of, both in phases 1, 2, and 3. And I think that that's what we need to hold Marvel to when it comes to standards. They've proven time and time again that they can blend comedy, action, drama, suspense, and great storytelling all in one package. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is a perfect example of how to take a story with a bunch of misfits, put them together, make it enjoyable and heartfelt, while also slap your knee funny the whole way through. I feel like now, especially in this phase 4, they've coasted on the success of the past. And even though they're trying to do some new things, they're not really doing much when it comes to telling worthwhile stories. And I'm afraid that Thor, as the character, has really just found himself in the crossfire this time. But now I'm turning it over to you guys. Let me know in the comments. Did you guys enjoy Thor 4? And if so, tell me why you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear it. And if there were some things that you found to be inconsistent or things you didn't enjoy about the movie, let me know. At the end of the day, these are just the rambles of the guy who should have gone to bed probably about 30 minutes ago. If you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop a like. And if you guys have been enjoying the content that I've been putting out, feel free to subscribe. I really appreciate you guys. Have a great day.